So sorry. I don't know if you can hear me. Renee, I'm gonna add you on here. Renee, can you hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you now. Yeah, but I had to exit and re-enter. That's all. And but I don't
Okay.
have my camera on. Sorry.
Well, we are live. I think it's just that it's not my computer crashed, but thankfully the program didn't stop even though my computer crashed. So shout out
Mhm.
to StreamYard on that. So we're just gonna go ahead and get started. And I know it is Friday, a rainy Friday evening. And I hope that there are those that join us now, just texting the cohort, just to make sure folks are on, uh, start tuning in.
Yep.
So give me a second. How you doing? Talk to me while I figure this stuff out.
Oh, well, it's been what a week. But I have some good news. Last night, I attended
Mhm.
my kiddos' school-based mental health family night. It was the first time they did a family night.
Oh,
Yep, and
say
it was
more.
not
Say
it was
more. That's exciting. What does
well
that
it
mean
was
for those who may not know what that means? What is that? Who organized that?
well
What's that all about?
it's a capital city public charter school, and they were in the original cohort, I believe, of public charter schools in Washington D.C. that was able to partner with a community-based organization, and in this case, it was called the Mary Center, and their partnership meant that they're able to provide bilingual, culturally diverse, and provide a base of contact for mental health supports in the school. So the staff decided to arrange to have a multilingual interpretation to invite family and staff and youth, and it was really amazing to see that that's kind of what the some of our long held goals were, was making schools a safer place to get supports in that way. So, and I
That's
think the only
amazing.
person was missing, yeah, only people was missing was you, the multi-tier support, right? No, but there wasn't anybody from DBH there, but just
What
having it there and
was
having.
there a social worker there? Is there any other
Yes.
organizational partner? Do you know who your provider partner is at your
Our
child's
provider
school?
partner is the provider partnership is through the Mary Center, so they have a suite
Woohoo! Okay,
attached to
that's a
the
good partner to
health
have.
suite. Hmm.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
it takes a
that's
lot of
definitely a great
burdens
partner.
off. Hmm.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad that is happening, because those are some of the things at the coordinating council level that we have been pushing for, and I'm going to explain what that means tonight. So as we get into it, there's a lot of content tonight. So please bear with us. I invited some people, and it's like whoever shows up, but there's a lot to talk out. So I hope um that you all have it. If you have any questions, and Renee, you're a live feedbacker. If Fari is able to hop on, she'll be one as well, and whoever else hops on the back end will give feedback. So I'm going to start with explaining, and technology and I have not been getting along very well today. So we'll see how this goes in terms of me sharing my screen. All right. Let me see if I can do this on my phone. I definitely need technical support. So if there's anybody listening to this at any point in history and wants to help a sister out by offering podcasting engineering support, holla at your girl in whatever venue that you're watching this. So we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, and LinkedIn. So I'm just trying to make sure that I can share my screen. Present, share my screen. There's the share screen button. Huh. Well, I think the best thing to do is to start from here. And I think you could see me. So sorry for all the glitchy things happening right now. So as I figure this out, hope you could see me. Actually, let me stop sharing just so I can bring you back up here, Renee.
Yes, I'm back. Mhm.
Okay, great. So I don't know why I can't see you. Where are you now?
Oh, I had the camera turned off while I was waiting so I can see you on a second monitor, see your presentation on a second
Oh,
monitor.
here it is. I couldn't see
Mhm.
this screen. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna share my screen yet again, and let me know if you could still see it this time, Renee. The live feedback's gonna help me know whether I'm doing right, uh, or whether I'm doing wrong. Are we gonna be wrong together? We'll be together. Like can you see it, Renee?
Yep, I see. I can see your screen. Session 8, the Akoma
Session
Project
eight.
recommendation. Yes.
Okay, great. As long as you can see that, I can't see what you see, but that's doesn't I don't need to see what you see. As long as you can see what you see, that means others can possibly see it too. Okay. All this to say, let's go. Like I said, a lot of content tonight. We're unpacking years of work, right, Renee? Years of work that we've been doing together. And it's been a ride and it's not a final destination, but I feel like we've made like significant strides, including the success. I feel like it really lifts my heart that you guys at your child's school had a school-based mental health night. That's a great start. And you have, I think one of the best partners, which is Mary Center. There are many great providers and community-based organizations that support the clinical services or just the multi-tiered system of support. And I know you flagged that earlier, Renee, but we're just gonna backtrack for those who may just be listening for the very first time. I'm going to be re-explaining some of the things that we've explained throughout these series. And what is this series? And I'm going to try and slow down my thought. And again, my deepest apologies and self-criticism for not making this process more accessible to different disability categories. The best I could do is slow down my thinking and my thought and share with a little more pace. If you watch this back on YouTube, you can add captions so you could hear it that way. If you are deaf, and if you have visual impairment or blind, um, my visual description. I'm really terrible at this, and I promise to work on scripting myself so that I'm not as self conscious in trying to describe that I am a Black woman with braids in my hair and a mic in front of my face. And, I'm not good at this. Room for improvement in terms of accessibility here, and that is the thrust of what we're doing. So I am in the learning curve with everyone else. Our process unveils what we have learned, not necessarily even our capacity to implement any of these things. And we know that it truly takes a village. And so everything that we say here, I for sure plan to put, my energies and my my money. I mean, I did all this for free labor, but my energies, my commitment, my dedication, all my resources, whatever those resources may be, into ensuring that the new knowledge that has come out of the Akoma Project process uh, does not has not been in vain, and actually seeks to be implemented to help uh, create a better world for the next 7 generations. Okay, all of that to say, this past 8 weeks now, this is week 8 of the boot camp. We have talked about many different interesting things. This is a 10-week boot camp. We are going to end the boot camp with a week of action. That week of action is may not happen in the way we envisioned it, or the way we agreed to do it as a cohort, only because, again, of my own capacity. But we will be, in any case, at the very least, having an end of the session celebration, and a Jedi community baby shower program. And so, more on that as we get closer to May 12th, which is the date. Save the date, think the date. Moving along, this is Renee. This is the part where I really want your feedback. So I just want to re-explain that we started this particular series 8 weeks ago with Renee and Fari. And Fari, if you're in the studio, if anyone is in the studio, I can't see you yet till I stop sharing my screen. So please just hang tight with me here. But what we explained on session 1, and if you're on YouTube, you can go to the archives. You could see on the live stream link, you can go back to session 1, which is about 8 weeks ago. And we introduced our team, the context in which the Akoma Project was born, and our dynamic. You guys have gotten to meet not just the 3 of us, but several other caregivers throughout the course of these 8 weeks so far. And these are the caregivers that are part and parcel of our caregiver boot camp. And if it's the caregivers that are in the chat, shout out to you all. You guys are awesome. I'm so grateful, proud, humbled, and just ready to even deepen our relationship with each other. So a lot of the explanations are going to be new tonight, because our Monday session, so we meet Mondays just as a cohort, and we don't record that live for anybody's content outside of our cohort. So it's where we can intimately unpack ideas. We didn't get as far in thought because of time, because this is really heavy duty. So because this is week 8, for the next, well, it'll just be next week, because the week after that, we're not going to be live streaming, and we'll be pontificating on the future of our podcasting process here. Like, if we so continue in this capacity, definitely think it has value, but it is a lot of work upon work upon work. But in any case, we've come a long way. And at the start, we explained that you know we had recognized during the pandemic, about 2020, when everything was just so intense for everybody. And certainly, by the time we get to the summertime, it's not just about COVID. It's also about George Floyd. It's about, just, Black Lives Matter, police brutality, everything that is just heavy in our world just seemed to come crashing down, on top of personal grief and mental health conditions, whether pre-existing, they would be exacerbated, or emerging conditions in people. So we recognize that this trauma, this impact that we all have shared experiences with, lots of grief, we're grieving different things, the loss of people, the loss of ways of being. Um, and one of the things that came out of it, but we also gained things. And one of the things that came out of it in terms of the birthing process was this relationship with each other, to seek to find answers through action and through camaraderie. Right. So we know that there are many carceral systems. It is not just the police, even though, we're not fans of them either. But we are really focused here about looking at a broadened view of carceral systems, because those of us who are navigating it understand the oppressive nature of it, may not have the language to explain our oppression or the traumas from oppression. And then there's the complicated interaction with just the stifling of anything we want to do in our housing, in our in throughout education, in healthcare, social services, child welfare, right? Like anything that we try to do, there is this oppressive element that limits what we can do and always seems to provide needs we don't need. And so we talked it out. We talked it out in many different capacities, informally, through processes that I've helped to coordinate and organize, and in participating in processes that allies and organizations and comrades have helped to organize and implement in the community. And we start with really trying to unpack, like, within the context of education, in the era of distance learning, school to prison pipeline, and just so much chaos happening. So the Akoma Project is born out of this chaos. And I'm gonna stop using that language. But the subject matter, what we're studying, and what the breadcrumbs that we had followed, goes way beyond 2020. It probably even goes way beyond 2012, when the South Capitol Street Memorial Act was first passed into law in the District of Columbia, and that is the law governing school-based mental health. And that law was passed, and we then later throughout the cohort, on one of our live streams, had a couple of our cohort members and other participants that were actively part of the architecture of passing that public policy, the law that we hope to change and strengthen, and decarcerate and decolonize. But there are 5 parts to the law, right? And the events that led up to what happened in 2012 was the unfortunate murder of several young people, including the youngest victim, which was 16-year-old Rochelle Jones. And this image is her mother, Nardine Jeffries, and former council member David Catania, former District of Columbia Council member David Catania, who co-authored and introduced the bill to City Council. At that time, he was Committee Chair of Health, and the act has 5 parts. It speaks to youth behavioral health epidemiology report, and that's a public health report that pretty much explains the impacts, or it's evaluative of how the social determinants of health are impacted by the implementation of this program. So I guess specifically looking at the behavioral health system and all the other indicators, like what's happening with youth crime in the summer, what's happening with access to health services, or timely, different things go into that report. If you go onto limbs.dc.gov, I believe is the link, you can type in South Capitol Street Memorial Act, and you can also pull up the full act, and you can see in detail all the parts of this. And you can Google DC Youth Behavioral Health Epidemiology Report. I think you can download that just from a Google search. Anyone curious to do that. But that's part one, the requirement to do that. I think the last report was done in 2017, maybe before that, right? Or 2018. The next part of the law was the implementation of early childhood and a school-based mental health infrastructure, which includes, and potentially better articulation could be stated around workforce development and the need to have people who are able to implement the requirements of the law and the needs of our children and school communities. And that second part starts with talking about early childhood, because in the implementation of school-based mental health in the District of Columbia, which did not start in 2012, it started maybe a decade before that in 2001. We've also addressed this in previous live streams here, and webinars, that it started with being implemented in the K-12 system. excuse me, whew, it started being implemented in the K-12 system. And so the law, the South Capital Street Memorial Act, intends to integrate early childhood development centers and pre-K programs, because the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., in any case, is a flagship for universal pre-K and all things early childhood. So it makes sense that they would put it in the law, and it makes no sense that it is not activating in the real world through implementation. The third part of the law is truancy, right? It addresses truancy as a determinant of maladaptive behaviors and things that indicate children and youth may need interventions. And so truancy intervention activates carceral logic. It activates carceral logic because what triggers this? If you miss enough days or late enough times, this automatic referral to child welfare. In the District of Columbia, that's called Child and Family Services Agency, CFSA. And then you can also be sent to court, because now you have to go if your child is skipping school because of many things. They're being bullied, they're having a crisis, there's lots going on in the home, in the community, things happening developmentally, there's a substance use disorder, there's a limitless amount of things that could be happening that could cause a child or a youth to not show up for school. But then to knee jerk to then send somebody who could potentially create, even compound that trauma through investigations, intrusive investigations that lack dignity, respect, or through, again, a courts process, because then you have to go see the judge and explain to the judge why the student is not in school, and thus then put you're yet at risk and under the radar as a household to be judged for the issues that you're faced and not necessarily helped for whatever may be causing truancy, which is I think, an appropriate indicator of things not going the way we want them to. The fourth part of the law is, Department of Behavioral Health infrastructure. So that's just kind of the lay of how this whole process is going to work in the real world. And I think the law should even go beyond saying behavioral health infrastructure, because it's beyond Department of Behavioral Health. This is an interagency and interdisciplinary process. It really should just be a city-wide or a statewide hashtag hands off DC, hashtag 51st state. Um, it should be a statewide process to really look at a well government system, a well school system, a well healthcare system, and we do things in well ways. And we expect that if we're well, then we'll produce well children. And then the last is child welfare and juvenile justice, the pinnacle of family policing, right? Like, these are the agencies that cause some of the worst consequences, non-intentionally, right? Like, I think call me naive, but I do believe that there are well-intended people who are called to be of service to families in crisis. I know so because I am one of those people. I feel called to be of service beyond my own household. So I understand the instinct to be of service in a grand macro level way, but it cannot do more harm. It has to do less harm. And so, these are the parts of the law that we study together, and I'm going to get into all of that. But some of the things that we saw as a key unaddressed issue is the need to integrate transition support services. Now, I'm going to explain what that means, but not right now, right? I want to first come here to this chart of carceral logic in family policing. This is a graph that, and Renee, can you see this? Well,
Yes, I can see it. I'm zooming in.
okay. Well, hopefully it's legible. Again, tech support, angels. looking for you. But the carceral logic and family policing, this is a graph by the Upend movement. I have been schooled by the Upend movement. Um, I deeply am grateful for the public intellectual contents that they have produced through the years, especially through the pandemic. This same Upend movement has connected me personally with some amazing human beings who are doing great work in other areas around the country, of which, I look forward to being in continued relationship with and community with, to fight this good fight to end the carceral systems, particularly the family policing system. But this image points out to policing, a graph of what that means. So we've talked about it. We've presented each week. We've done these live streams. We present different terms that help deepen our understanding of carcerality, of carceral logic, of family policing, of abolition, of decolonialism, of decarceration. But see, hopefully we're all different learners, and I know this is heavy stuff and this is a marathon, not a sprint. So this is just another way to ingest what we're talking about if it hasn't quite landed for you yet. The carceral logic here and these images are in the appendices of the Akoma Project report, which we are working to finalize so we can launch it at some point this year, as much as I could say, hopefully, inshallah, to my Muslim friends, Eid Mubarak to my Muslim peoples. So an Upend movement blog by Emma Payton. So this explains a couple of things here: that policing in prisons, family policing system, carceral logic. As you can see, there's how you think, there's the brain, the mental models, the way we unpack ideas, and how we think, the things that inform what we call implicit biases, and or explicit biases, or racist, ableist, sexist, misogynistic. All of those things are dismissive ways of really just talking about the way we think, and how we come to this place of pathologizing caregivers, and particularly biological parents, right? And we follow this journey map here, and it says the terrible few, right? Like we love the model minority, we love the good victim, and we shame the bad victims, um, and we impose upon things we don't understand through ableist lens, boogeyman, uh, scare tactics, or just scary ways of processing what the unknown, right? And so we call people the terrible few. We do, there's so many slogans, I think, in the 80s and the 90s, when it's the welfare queen, and all those kinds of very dismissive, flippant, disrespectful ways of explaining pathological conditions caused by colonialism and capitalism, and all the things that are just not working well for us as humans. And then again, the innocence, the good victim versus the bad victim, versus the hero complex, the great white hope, the big hand of the state, the nanny state. For those who know what that is, we're not going to get too deep in that right now, but just a state that is literally infantilizing its public in order to oppress and control them. And that's not the only role of the state. I believe very much in the state. I'm a political scientist. I you respect people who are anarchists and stuff like that, but that's not my politic. I believe in due process. I believe in these kinds of, I believe in order. I believe in these things. And, for right or wrong, this is where I am in my political development. And so the state is not categorically not a useful entity. It just should and must be transformed or renegotiated, rebrokered, to be able to serve the people it's supposed to do. And it does take abolitionist vision in order to create that world. And in any case, based on the way we have it, it's duplicative. It replicates itself. Carceral expansion, as we could see down here, that's how we get the cradle to prison pipeline and the school to prison pipeline, right? Like these carceral logics and this mental model of the bad victim and the good victim and the savior state, the patriarchal, right, state, and carceral expansion, punishment, surveillance, regulation. That's what we get. That's the gifts we get, right? And so and so this doesn't say just, this image does not only convey child welfare. It starts in the mind of whoever has that responsibility to be a guardian of a systemic function that impacts some of the most vulnerable people in society. And so assessments are done, so-called assessments, right? Mothers are punished for failing to protect their children from an abusive partner, remove the child from home. She's a victim too, or they are victims too, you know. But then you victim further victimize the victims, and then black men are perceived as larger and more threatening than white men, and that's whether there's usually no basis to that. And if there are intersecting identities there, that if the black man or male presenting person is not you know is not is not able to cognitively respond to any situation. So many things we can misinterpret human behavior as being defiant or being maladaptive or being criminal, when it's really just ableist interpretation of people just showing up the best they can in this world and being punished and killed and imprisoned for it. And then we know that parents who are neurodivergent and disabled are hyper scrutinized, right? That we are, even for those of us who are neurodivergent people, who are disabled in many different ways, we catch it even worse. And it's on both sides, the caregivers and the children, right? And the combination of the two. And don't you dare be disabled and then have a disabled child, right? Like, it's a horrible ride. All right, I'm going to pause here for a second before I continue, just so I can take a breath and just kind of get what you're getting from this, Renee. What say you? Oh, Fari,
Oh,
Renee.
sorry.
So were you guys able to see that off? I wasn't able to see the screen, so I will be putting it back up. But I just wanted to come so I could do what I just did, and just check in what you guys thinking so far based on what you heard before we continue, because we got a lot more content to show you. But
I love the up in graphic as a visual learner. That really kind of broke it down, especially as it relates to hyper scrutinizing neurodivergent parents.
I'm going to put it back up again so I can hear you. If somebody comes into the chat or comes into the studio, please let me know, because I won't be able to see it when I share my screen. Okay.
Okay.
But go ahead, Fari. I just want to share it, but keep going.
Yes. I think that needs to be. I think more caregivers need to understand what is happening to them. The victimization is the reality is that people don't realize how carceral logic is and family policing victimizes them. It's the norm for them. They're especially in low income Black and Brown communities. I think in many ways they have come to expect to be treated that way,
Mm,
and they have come to that's the norm for our families.
yeah.
And so um how they accept it, I know they've accepted it because I had accepted it,
Mm,
and I didn't do better until I knew better. And so I
yeah.
imagine that enslaved mentality, um just running rampant in our communities because people really do not understand how systemically effed up the school system, the mental system, and the um, justice
Behavioral health
system
system.
is.
Oh, well, yeah, that too, right? Yeah, the whole thing. Yes. Renee, what are you thinking? Thank you for that, Fari.
I'm well. I'm just speechless in some ways. It's like whoa. It's that's so profound to see it laid out as one graphic, and and then when I think about, I was reflecting on the fact that the school system that one of my children attend had their this year's first family mental health night, and as I was sitting in the classroom, sitting in the school, and I was just really struck by how what a long way we've come towards normalizing some of this. But with normalizing school-based mental health, there's always that risk, that danger, so families are going to be able to see that as a marker and see, oh yeah, maybe that could stick in health. But we have to be able to lay out that there's both sides to it. Yes, is it you have to take a risk in getting help for those kind of things, but the risk is the carceral logic of the system that's supposed to provide you with the remedy.
That's right. And we have to be able to call it out that it's just no.
Mhm.
There's got to be a third way, another way. Another world is possible. I'm using a whole bunch of taglines, cliches of left movements, but yes, all of that. There's a reason there are
You know
taglines
what,
and
Fiona?
cliches. Uh-huh.
I am
Sorry, go ahead.
reminded. I'm reminded of one of Harriet Tubman's quotes because I'm
Mhm.
sitting here wondering and just trying to figure out how to manifest making this information available, especially to our neurodivergent families, but to all families. Harriet
Mhm.
Tubman said, I could have freed thousands more had they known they were slaves.
Yes, Armenta. Yes, ancestor.
And,
Absolutely, right? Like
and I
it's
believe
it's in the mind. It's in the
it
mind. It
is.
starts in the mind.
It does. It does.
That's powerful. So thank you for that, and let's power through because, like I said, it's going to be a 6:40.
Well,
The night is young.
this graphic is going to be at the forefront
It's
of
going to
my
be in the
mind
Akoma.
when we're planning our action, our in-person action.
All right, all right, all right, and it's going to be in the Akoma Project report when we launch it, whenever that happens. um, but just also wanting to then move on and progress in terms of where we are and unpacking the report because we are unpacking it verbally before we launch it in writing with all that takes and the learning curve that I have to okay, I'm not gonna derail myself with just how much work this is. But okay, the Akoma Project and continues. So the word Akoma is an indigenous African. It's rooted in. I'm just going to read it verbatim. It says it's rooted in indigenous African values as the foundation for the DC Black cultural elements and other non-African indigenous cultural elements that are part of the lived experiences of the many vulnerable Black and Brown children and youth with unmet mental health needs. A native Washingtonian, Nardine Jeffries, who's the mother of the youngest victim of that tragic event on March 30th, 2010, is a product of DC Black culture that preserves these African values in important and transformative ways that inform how she processed her grief and the action steps taking to honor her daughter, extremely high value to a working democratic system. Further, explaining the outcome of partnership with council member David Catania and Jeffries, he wrote, the product of Jeffries and his effort in the South Capitol Street Memorial Act Amendment Act of 2012, passed unanimously by DC Council on March 20th, my birthday, 2012. The act creates a comprehensive youth behavioral health infrastructure in the district. The act will transform how the district addresses youth behavioral issues, strengthens our ability to identify signs of unmet behavioral health needs early, and allow us to effectively intervene in order to prevent future negative outcomes. So all of this to say, Akoma is the word is the Indinkra is an Indinkra symbol which is rooted in Akan culture in Ghana, West Africa. Shout out West Side Africa, right? African immigrant here. It's a word that means the heart, right? Like it's about how we show up in terms of seeking truth with our heart, and that when we move with our heart, we offer things we offer wisdom to things, we offer compassion to things, we offer healing to things. And this is it's an essential African value that the Akan people named Akoma. But me being Igbo, I know that we have and share those concepts as well as things that are of universal African appreciation globally. And, part of the argument we're making here is that caregiving from our African worldview is really about this process of healing and preservation of culture and transformation of pain. And so our recommendations also informed by that, but more about that. We also say that just I'm going to skip this top part, and I'm just going to, these again are just quotes from the actual report, that an African problem notes that children who are not embraced by the village burn it down to feel its warmth. It is worthy of acknowledging that council member Catania seemed to immediately understand the value of her, as in Nadine Jeffries' partnership, and this is evident in the media coverage of the aftermath of the events on March 30th, 2010, and the legislative process to pass the act into law. Yet, what is a grade A practice in participatory democratic processes, some aspects of the letter of the law unfortunately reinforces carceral logic. And so, just also going from the top here down to like where Renee Fari and I specifically, and not just Renee Fari and I and Claudia, shout out to Claudia, sending healing energies to Claudia Rojas, who is an amazing human being, the backbone of our adventures, in this time, and the non-visible member of our team, and not for any other reason than that's just the way she wants to care for us. But that our team, we've had a whole bunch of other people, organizations helping us read on drafts of this process. The time for acknowledgments will come, and we are definitely publicly going to give everyone their flowers that have impacted us. But for us, the three of us, the core team here, as a horizontal body of peers, the Akoma Project team in practice is an important component of our data collection and processing efforts. As previously mentioned, from October 2021 until January 2022, our team met monthly in preparation for more active period of engagement from January until May 2022. During the first months, the functions of our teaming practice was primarily in studying and understanding the content of the South Capitol Street Memorial Act of 2012. By January 2022, we had an incredible understanding of not just the history of the act, we also got to understand its hood. See, this is why this is not a finished draft, so to speak, and developed an analysis of the content of the act, reflecting on our experiences as family caregivers who all three attended DC public schools as youth in our youth, right? And engaging each other in dialogue and how we felt about the different aspects of the act, with consideration that we also have school age children that are in the home right now. So as a team, we would meet every Wednesday, and we'd hop on a Zoom, and we'd like literally just like read the law out loud and look at it together, and it is a very important process for me. And then, we came up with these 7 areas of improvement. And I want to just I'm gonna, after I go over the 7 areas of improvement and what we did with that, I'm gonna pause and then get you guys feedback again. So so it says here, we developed a list of 7 aspects of the law we hope to see significant improvement. These proposed changes to strengthen more directly impacted people, impacts the root causes of pathologies and disproportionalities, including number one, the areas that we thought should be improved are: number one, expanding community care to involve partnerships with non-traditional family-centered organizations, violence disruptor programs, out-of-school time providers, culturally affirming community healers that provide things like Reiki, yoga, mindfulness, and meditation. Number two, that early childhood and transition support from birth to 3 to pre-K to 12, or from 3 to pre-K, pre-K to from K to 12, to secondary transition up to the age of 25, and other important life transitions, grade level to grade level, in between schools, et cetera, et cetera. That we focus on transition supports. That's number two. Number three, improved tier 1 and tier 2. So last week where we left off was specifically talking about the multi-tiered system of support. Tier 3 is crisis level. Shout out to the ACLU. I had the opportunity, the honor, pleasure to participate in a press conference they had at the Wilson building on recommendations that they are making, or that we are making through another coalition called the Crisis Intervention Coalition, to decarcerate tier 3. Like, get the police out of there. Get the police out of there. And even the clinical force that are there, like, let's promote some of the same recommendations that we're going to unpack here for the Akoma Project. But our number 3 area of improvement was to improve the preventative, the early intervention aspects of implementing school-based mental health. And that's not a tier 3. Tier 3 is crisis care. Tier 1 is universal supports for everyone. Tier 2 is small groups, right? And more on that later. Number 4, we said more consideration for students in more restrictive environments. That is specific language to special education. The most restrictive environment, we talked about this when we talked about special education. The most restrictive environment is the home. And then, next to that is the prison and the institution. And then next to that is the home and the hospital, or I guess is the home or hospital. And I guess hospital or institution or prison, which is supposed to be a rehabilitative center. The least restrictive environment is the public education. That's the least restrictive place to receive education in the United States. So we hope to more consideration for students in more restrictive environments for children and youth in private schools on the public dime called non-public schools. Students who are psychiatrically placed, which majority of those students are students navigating the foster care system. And navigating the foster care system. Sorry, that was my friend talking to me back here. More consideration for students in more restrictive environments for children and youth, and on public and psychiatrically placed environments, which majority of students that are psychiatrically placed in the District of Columbia are receiving those services out of state, and majority of those students are young people in foster care. Incarcerated youth in so-called juvenile justice. In DC, it's DYRS, Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services. And those are receiving home-based learning by choice or because of a medical fragile condition. So we want more consideration in this school-based mental health expansion to students in these alternative environments. Number 5, we said that we saw strengthening family centered due process protections for accountability in the systems of care in navigating school based mental health, so that there should be consequences if a family has let people know that there's stuff going on and they're not getting appropriate help. So that's like really flipping it on its head. Mandated supporting, not mandated reporting. Let there be consequences, not for reporting. Like, don't report, support. Right? Don't report, support. I didn't come up with that. Shout out to Joyce McMillan of JMAC for Families in New York. Number 6, include ABA therapy providers and other sensory based behavioralists in the menu of providers. I don't know why ABA is not available in terms of that. I do know this is the end of Autism Acceptance Month. I'm open in all the criticisms about ABA therapy and what doesn't work for it, but for I think that it's not the therapeutic protocol that is problematic. It's the method. It's the implementation. It's like anything. If you decarcerate ABA, if there are ways you can redirect behavior that are not about punishing somebody, or you can redirect behavior without that preserves who they are and their natural cultural expressions, and you decolonize that, then it would be a good intervention, because it's supposed to help redirect behaviors that we want to see show up differently for people that we want to love. So, and love ourselves if we're the people that need that. So, number 7, enhance participatory democratic opportunities for the family caregiver and youth self advocate to participate in the development of the school strengthening tool, and require schools to complete the forms that's a work plan, not a form, and process. So, in presenting these 7 points to our cohort, we did a fellowship together. Shout out to Black Futures Lab. We were part of the 2021-2022 class for the Black Futures Lab, Black Public Policy Institute. So all 3 of us, Renee, Faria, myself, um, not just were part of our team, but we also linked up with other teams around the country that I hope to circle back when the dust settles, because there were some really beautiful, powerful, amazing humans that we met through that process. But we presented these 7 points to our cohort, and through ranked choice voting, we got their input, and that clicks out to be able to see the votes and who and what they thought was who thought was the one that we should go with. So when they plugged in their vote, the one that came up with the most votes in terms of being able to concentrate our amendment energy on was number 1, which is expanding community care options here to involve partnerships with non-traditional, family-centered, violence disruptor programs, OST, culturally affirming healers, doing a menu of mental health interventions that can be culturally affirming, that are not clinical, that are decolonized, that can be peer led. So we're going to stop this for now. And what say you guys? Tots.
All the fond memories of the Black Policy Institute came rushing back.
Claudia, we love you. Sorry.
Hi, Claudia. Feel better.
Yeah. It's been
The
8
Black
weeks.
Futures Lab, the Black
Yes,
Policy,
Lana.
oh,
Go ahead.
the Black
Sorry.
Policy Institute, the Black Policy Institute cohort was probably the most intense and informal project that I've ever worked on in my entire life. Um, and working with you, Chioma, you led us in such a powerful way to understand um, how we broke down the law. We had some intense meetings, informational sessions, brainstorming sessions. Um, it was just the greatest experience of my life. I learned so much from you. So, but there's still work to do.
There's still work to do. We're not done
There's
yet,
something to
Mama
get
Fari.
into.
We're not
Yes.
done yet. Indeed. Ashe, Ashe. Renee, what say you? You're on mute.
I'm not. Yeah, I Wow, just there's just so much more to say about this. I'm still digesting. I don't know. It was definitely the most intense, experience of like looking at these issues while parenting in real time, mind you, while surviving a pandemic, in real time.
Whew,
So,
indeed.
so and so now I'm looking at the city as a whole of how we're going to navigate the next level. I But yeah, I'm just kind of speechless. I'm just like, this is just so it's just so amazing to look back at how much effort this was.
Yeah, I know. And when it was happening, and so much life has happened, right? So much life has happened for all of us. But so do you guys remember when we would, get on the Zoom and we'd like study the act and we'd highlight and we'd read it? Do you have any memories from that? Anything stick out to you from that period, that stage of what we were doing? Um
The process of elimination stuck out for me because we would we we presented, and I think we had 10 different amendments that we wanted to go with.
Yeah,
And then
7. Yep.
Catherine was like,
Oh,
no.
well, we started with 10 and then we presented 7, right?
And Catherine was like, no, we need to go back to the drawing board and streamline this more. And I remember that meeting where we were trying to figure out what to take out. It's almost
I
like
still don't know. I mean, I was just reading it now and I was going, these are all still good.
it was like being in the grocery store and you needing everything in your cart, but you didn't have enough money and you had to take something out of the cart. What do you eliminate? That's what it was like. It was like saying, what kind of accommodation? We're entitled to all of the accommodations, all of that.
All of them. All of them.
That was
Whew.
hard. That was hard for me
Yes.
to, and it was emotional trying to figure
Oh,
out what to omit because you want to be inclusive of all the families and all the fields and all the different disabilities. And so how do you what kind of process do you use to take something out? That was hard.
and I think that, even more consciousness to that dilemma, I think is useful in terms of just strengthening our leadership capacity and also building our emotional intelligence, because that's the same kind of dilemma that our elected officials are also experiencing. Like, they have to make decisions like, what do I fund with the limited resources I have? And they go through that exercise, which I cannot stand, where they say, here's $100, pay here anyway. But there's this exercise that is done to demonstrate how hard it is to have a finite amount of resources to do an expansive amount of things. Um and and so we recognize that none of this is easy, and it's not easy for anyone, but least of all the most vulnerable people. So we just prioritize and discern who we also lend compassion to, at what degree and what level. But anyways, let me just continue the show here and just keep going down memory lane and um presenting. I'm gonna share my screen again. All right, so back to this. All right, so those are the 7, and then we came down to expanding community care resources. We then, this was, again, we wrapped this up. We wrapped this part up again. I think, what did we say? We By January was when we needled it down. January last year, January 2021, we needled it down to that one view and how, and then decided how we were going to approach to refine it even more. And a part of that process was caregiver night. And so caregiver night, shout out to Claudia again. Claudia Rojas designed this flyer. Claudia is the best human in the world. Well, I love all my sisters and all my people. But Claudia designed this, and so we gave each participant that wanted to come, a gift card, or we sent it out virtually, a cash gift, and they would spend an hour talking to Howard students who were broken up into 8 groups. So I was teaching a race and public policy class. Shout out to the Department of Political Science at Howard University, HU. Right. And those students were the best. I love those students so much. The best students in the world are Howard University undergraduate students in political science, without a doubt. And so the caregivers spent time with the students, who some are now off in college. I mean, off in grad school. A couple have gotten into law school. It's They have gone far. And not now. At some point, I'm going to reach back out to some of the students that participated in this process, and I want to let me see if I can work that out for next Friday. Let me see if I can get at least one student to join us next Friday that participated in Caregiver Night. So anyways, so we had a Caregiver Night in April last year, and there were 8 student groups because there were a lot of students. And so there were maybe about 10 people per group and 8 student groups. So pity me, who had 80 plus students to grade that semester while also researching and organizing and all of that. But anyways, so they joined with DC caregivers who will be sharing their experiences and navigating the school-based behavioral health system, engage their current level of understanding of key concepts like abolitionism, police brutality, disability justice, systems of care, and carceral systems. And so one of the things that came out of that night, is that we got caregiver feedback. And so one of the no, that's wrong. That's supposed to say something else. So maybe next week I was supposed to copy and paste like some feedback from there. Let me see if I can pull it up on a Word document. Yeah, no, that's going to take too long. Next week is another week to continue to do this, and so we'll focus on some of the feedback. But I did want to show this small video from another speaker, from like somebody I found like randomly on YouTube, who had something interesting to say about caregiving and the family policing systems. So it's from a talk called Social Work, White Supremacy, and Racial Justice. So I'm just going to play this for a few minutes because I thought it was interesting. I was going to compare it with like what the caregiver feedback is about. So I may play this again next week, but I still think it's useful to talk about tonight.
Through a series of articles and reports linking free market ideas to social conservatism. Charles Murray in 1984 argued that public assistance created dependency and discouraged labor market involvement. He claimed that African-American mothers receiving AFDC were fleecing working whites, although the 1988 data showed more AFD recipients were white than Black. Lawrence Mead in 1997 contended that poverty was due to the lack of opportunity to learn normative behaviors and attitudes, and he called for a new paternalism that required specific paid work and parenting behaviors to receive assistance. Neither spoke about the work involved in parenting and mothering. The new conservative consensus submitted to Congress in 1987 to influence policy incorporated monitoring and disciplining engagement in the workforce, behavioral expectations of parenting, encouraging marriage, and paid work in exchange for public benefits, and even the possibility of no public assistance. Left undetermined was how to address caregiving. Interestingly, in 1996 welfare reform, the second plank of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce was to pass welfare reform. Under this policy, poor mothers had to be both full-time workers and full-time parents. While 58% of children were lifted out of deep poverty prior to TANF, today only 14% are. Next slide. Citizenship rights assessment. Let's weigh the evidence. Civil rights may be the most compromised in the most for women who receive TANF. Political rights appear to be compromised through time commitments imposed by TANF as paid worker and full-time parent. By contractualizing the right to economic subsistence in a quid pro quo fashion, social rights have been severely undercut. Economic rights of being involved in decision-making regarding markets and organizations and capital, and the subsidiary right to unionize are incredibly important for mothers who receive TANF. They must be able to earn enough as a sole breadwinner to support their family and purchase services to still fulfill social reproduction roles. And along this vein, based on the country's ability to support mothering, I suggest a new sub-right under economic rights, and that of social reproduction or social care intervention rights. This unpaid, unrecognized work that props up the American economy should not continue to be unrecognized nor unpaid. In terms of the power analysis, while we can clearly see the power of top-down coercion evident in the market arrangements and government policies, we have less of a sense of how power is expressed in the microsystems of practice.
Skip a little bit because I just wanted to get to the part of talking about caregiving. Give me 1 second. It was like 250.
Reform. Under this policy,
I don't know.
Logical power of individual attributes and disability movements have done this. And in liberal democracies, projects of freedom and equality have rested on the expansion and systems to allow people to embody their rights of citizenship. And social work should reflect on its history and turn towards this project in its curriculum, research, and practice. And we have just seen an incredible.
Okay, so sorry. The point, the goal of sharing that, I don't know if you all got out of it what I wanted you to get out of it, but you know, just I think it's really important in terms of framing like how we process, you know, the role of caregiving in society, period. And so how we approach people who are mothers, people who may be mothering but may not identify as mothers, people who are caregiving whether they are fathers or brothers or aunties or sisters or cousins, or they just don't identify as a mother even as they are a birthing person, that we have this range of people who offer care, but any avenue publicly that is offered to help execute those caregiving roles are typically you know, just really, really offensive and disrespectful, and the consequence, and just illogical, because at the end of the day, like, if you recognize, like, this was talking about TANF specifically, and if you've ever been on TANF, you know that, like, it's impossible to maintain your benefits, because, like, you have work to do, you have to work, right? Like, you have to work to receive TANF. And then in working to receive TANF, you still have, I mean, you're a caregiver, because you have to have a child in the home to be eligible to receive TANF. Like, make it make sense. The math doesn't math. It's just, any thoughts on that, Fari?
I'm trying to gather my thoughts without using profanity.
I mean, I say speak your mind. I mean, we're not, we're public, but this is not monetized. So there's no, like, I say speak your mind.
You know, programs and policies.
Are you sick of the bullshit? Which one?
Sick of the bullshit.
I
got some new lyrics too.
Let me play that.
Don't shoot. Police in our schools, just to name a few. Welcome to the revolution. It begins with you. Fannie Lou, hang and tie when it comes to this shit. 1, 2, 3, 4. We sick of the bullshit. 1, 2, 3, 4. We sick of the bullshit. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sick of the bullshit.
Okay. All right.
So
I
education is good.
digress.
You should see my
Original by
grandson.
Fari.
See my grandson looking at me.
I think he's like, there's grandma hitting the bars. Those bars skills. Okay. But yeah, so
It keeps us in this crab barrel mentality where if we make just a little bit too much money, everything is snatched away from us. If we put forth an effort to try to elevate our families in any way, we get pushed right back down into that crab barrel. And so I applaud many Black mothers and fathers, well, caregivers, who, especially during the systemic pandemic, got creative and developed multiple streams of incomes, home-based businesses. People have their own little clothing lines. They're selling dinners. The people are sustaining themselves. As you always say, we keep us safe. We keep us fed. So people have gotten real creative in understanding ways to stay under the radar, but still elevate their families. And so even though the system tries to suppress us, we are a people of resilience. And I'm happy to see our families achieving against all the odds. A lot of families are achieving against the odds. I think back to my first time around as a parent, and then I look at a lot of the parents today in these same neurodivergent spaces, and I think we've made, even though we have a lot to accomplish as it relates to abolition, changing those systems, I think we've come a long way. And I just kind of want to acknowledge the resilience of our families in spite of the plots to keep us oppressed.
Oh, Ashe. And resilience, see, fatigue is real too. Like sometimes you can't break down. There's sometimes you snap. Sometimes you Sometimes it's not pretty.
That's
Sometimes you
right.
kirk out. Sometimes you lose it. Sometimes you walk out the room, you take a walk, you catch a man, right? Like sometimes it doesn't go according to plan,
Right.
but you just keep it moving, right?
You do. You do.
So back to the board. So we only got 15 minutes, and I want to get as far as we can in unpacking this. So I'm just going to talk for a little longer, and then we're going to come back and then end it. So for tonight. There's so many terms here, and I'm not going to get into all of them. I'm just going to go down to so that was our process, right? So when we got the data from the caregiver night, let me go back to the caregiver night image. When we completed that caregiver night, there were also surveys. So the students had so each student group was 10 people, and they had to divide the labor that of how they were going to execute and come up with something collectively, right? So it wasn't them individually doing papers. In 2021, there was a semester before we got together. I did have a semester of students that did a preliminary phase of interviews, and they did individual interviews, but then wrote group papers based on their individual interviews. And that's why we changed the process, just how confusing that was for them, how it felt for them. That data is also in the complete report. At the time, the project was called LEDI. The students in 2020 21 helped us rename the project to Akoma Project, because that was a feedback of theirs, that whatever we're talking about, if we want to center disabled youth, why would we call it law enforcement and disabled youth? That means you're putting law enforcement before disabled youth. So we changed the name to Akoma Project to also grow and expand. In any case, the data that we got from that night, the students, again, in their groups, they had to divide themselves for somebody who was going to take notes, somebody who was going to fill out the information on a Google form me and Claudia had the back end access to. And then from there, we coded the responses, and then the students also wrote papers. So we were looking for trends in their papers in terms of thought, and then trends in the dialogues they were having with the caregivers, to then come up with some analysis, which is in the Akoma Project report. One clear analysis we came up with, or I say, I as the principal, I as the person who did the writing and leading in terms of the processing, is this concept of peer support kept coming up. And at the time, just personally, I had begun a relationship with a organization in Florida. Shout out to the Family Cafe of Florida. And Ironically, kismically, they are a nonprofit in Florida, in Tallahassee, Florida, and they provide technical assistance. They're one of few organizations around the country that received a federal grant from SAMHSA, that is a division within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services that focuses on, that offers grants and kind of offers grants to help states and state projects and state partners remain in fidelity of what some of the best practices that have come out of that work. And one of those practices is peer support. And so the Family Cafe of Florida provides technical assistance for the peer support workforce around the country. And I had the honor and the pleasure of doing trainings with them, doing some leadership trainings with them. And so that also gave me an intimate view of people who are peer workers around the country. But Fari is a peer worker. I have been a peer worker. We, like, whether we call ourselves peer workers or we are on the family engagement team of whatever organization we work for, we're the community organizer of whatever organization we work for, we're the case manager, we're the project lead, we're the support specialist, all those things are peer roles that I only began to define through the research to give insight to what we were discovering in our collective process in the Akoma Project. And so SAMHSA defines peer support encompasses a range of activities and interactions between people who share similar experiences of being diagnosed with mental health conditions, substance use disorders, or both. This mutuality, often called peerness, between a peer support worker and a person in or seeking recovery promotes connection and inspires hope. Peer support offers a level of acceptance, understanding, and validation not found in many other professional relationships. By sharing their own lived experiences and practical guidance, peer support workers help people to develop their own goals, create strategies for self empowerment, and take concrete steps towards building fulfilling, self determined lives for themselves. And this is another graph from SAMHSA's website. Lots of references. So, as a geek, information geek, lots of follow up reading, lots of that you can build up by going through that list and Googling and accessing. And we even talked on Monday's session of like, yeah, we should totally take a trip down to Library of Congress and go get, our library cards there. Because even if you Google in your home some of these resources, these references, you may not be able to access whatever comes up on Google because it's behind a paywall. Because a lot of academic knowledge, the best academic knowledge, many knowledge produced through the academic market, let me put it like that, tend to hide behind a paywall. So you can't just Google the article and say, let me read it. You got to pay for it to read it. But if you go to the Library of Congress, as Washingtonians, if anyone who wants to take a field trip down to DC and go to the Library of Congress, one can go down to the Library of Congress and get a card, which is free, and you can access any database in the world for free. So we as Washingtonians have an extra edge. Some local libraries in other states have those kinds of resources, but the range, the possibility of like having to pay to read something at the Library of Congress are very slim. So, anyways, derailment of that is to say that there is this this graph also is the gift that keeps on giving in terms of if one truly wants to understand. So I go to city council and I say, hey, peer support. And you start asking me to explain what that is to you. And there's all this information out here in our world. There's a bigger problem with our democratic system. But anyways, here here it is. So what is peer support based and looking on this graph is that, does peer support make a difference? And these are this, if you can't see this well, I'm just going to read what it says. It says these are the benefits of peer support. It increases self-esteem and confidence. And then they also give you the citation as to where you can go to read more about what the data says about that. And then it increases sense of control and ability to help bring about changes in their lives. So it does that better than others, some kind, or it does that with some positive results. I mean, I'd even say in comparison to anything else. It increases a sense that treatment is responsive and inclusive of needs. It increases a sense of hope and inspiration. It decreases psychotic symptoms. It decreases some substance use and depression. It increases social support and functioning. It reduces hospital admission rates and longer community. It increases engagement in self-care and wellness. It increases empathy and acceptance. I mean, the benefits go on. It says the role of a peer support worker complements but does not duplicate or replace the role of therapists, case managers, and other members of a treatment team. It is a member of a team that needs to be fortified, a team that needs to exist, first of all, in the District of Columbia, because they don't. Not for real. Not at the school level. Peer support workers bring their own personal knowledge out of what it is like to live and thrive with mental health conditions and substance use disorders. They support people's progress towards recovery and self-determined lives by sharing vital experience information and real examples of the power of recovery. The sense of mutually created experiences is influential in modeling um, recovery and offering hope, right? This graph is also in the Akoma Project report. Um, you know, what we're trying to do is create a comprehensive school-based behavioral health system, right? Which is a strategic collaboration between school personnel, community mental health providers, students, and families to create a positive school culture, right? That's the goal. Teams, because that's what we even have talked about on the macro level, on the state level, through since 2017. Watch back the live streams if you don't know what I'm talking about in the continuity of that reference. Teams offer a full array of trauma-informed, culturally responsive, evidence-based tiered interventions to promote wellness, identify challenges early, and offer treatment services when necessary so that all, I say all, including those who are disabled, those who are neurodivergent, those who are the bad victims or whatever, so that all children and youth succeed and thrive. My Nigerianness came out. And the way that the school, so the Coordinating Council for School-Based Mental Health has gone through processes that we also explain in the Akoma Project report, because I've been on the front lines of that too. And through that process, which we will not go into now, we selected the school strengthening tool, which is publicly accessible through CDC to help develop a way of doing needs assessment to know what schools need in order to support the implementation of school-based mental health services and then help people access unmet mental health needs. Um, we then adopted, we as in the Coordinating Council for School-Based Mental Health in 2017, 2018, then agreed to say that we voted on different assessment tools. We settled on the school strengthening tool work plan. Well, we settled on the school strengthening tool, which is what CDC had prescribed. And then we adjusted it to meet our needs for school-based mental health. And we call that the school strengthening tool work plan. And so the school strengthening tool work plan is by the school behavioral health coordinator and community-based organizations who get grants through the Department of Behavioral Health to hire clinicians who will then be deployed to schools or clusters of schools and matched with schools. And so in collaboration with school communities, which is the school leaders, school mental health team members, and key stakeholders from each participating schools, school complete the school strengthening tool. They do the assessment. The clinician does the assessment, brings it back to the team. They look at it. And then after they look at the data from that assessment, they develop a work plan on based on what they're going to do for tier 1 activities this school year, what they're going to do for tier 2 activities the next school year, what they're going to do for tier 3 activities the next school year. And then they submit it to OSSI, right? And OSSI reviews, and hopefully down the line, OSSI can provide technical assistance and help them think through and help them implement and help them be accountable to what they promised they said they would do. But as it stands, the teams are supposed to develop these work plans by October each year. So school typically starts August, September, and then by October they're supposed to have convened their behavioral health team and then created that plan and submitted it to OSSI and hopefully gotten feedback and implementing it. Right. I mean, by the time they finish doing all of that, the semester is over. So I'm like, why don't you do this in the summertime? You know, Pandora's box there. But these are all the roles in terms of like who we envisioned. This is coordinating council, this data from the coordinating council. Shout out to Dr. Sharnetta Scott of the Department of Behavioral Health. She did a presentation with us with last year's cohort. And it's also available on our YouTube. If you go to a playlist, you'll see the videos from last year's cohort and Sharnetta Scott's presentation. This is one of the slides available. And so these are the roles in which we talked out in the coordinating council to say that we want to see these roles be part of this envisioned behavioral health team. That includes the principal or their representative, the school-based coordinator, whoever that may be, and the school-based behavioral health staff, community-based clinicians, DBH clinicians, non-behavioral health school staff, students and families, and other community partners, right? So the problem is, what's the problem here? Sounds great, right? Interdisciplinary sounds like a very peaceful gathering of people. The issue is that there is nobody on the job for this. This is nobody's job. It's a volunteer role. We're just winding down on budget season, and like there's year after year after year of advocacy. We talked about some of the advocacy campaigns last year, and like in the years past, they just don't hit the nail on the head in terms of what we need. Why year after year after year, for many years, we have come up with this concept of having a behavioral health team and a team coordinator, and there is no money allotted to developing and investing in this process, which brings the whole thing together, right? So we came up with our recommendations based on this. But I just want to say one more thing. I had invited some folks to come through. Shout out to 1DC to talk cooperative. I will end on this note. So we're not actually just kidding. We're not going to go through the recommendations tonight. We will go through the recommendations next week. There are many, 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 many recommendations. So but I do want to say that one of the things that this also has done beyond give us a public policy agenda is it's given meat to a vision of that we're working to bring to life, and we'll kick that off later in the year. and is part of our process and has been part of our process for the past few years, is Neuro Mama. So every time we have these caregiver political education boot camps, we offer care packages. And every time we have a community baby shower, we offer care packages. And they're done through an initiative called Neuro Mama. Now, Neuro Mama, fortunately, with a partnership we were able to forge with One DC, one community, one neighborhood. It's a housing organization, nonprofit organization that is based here in the District of Columbia. They've opened the Black Workers Wellness Center in Ward 8, which is down the street from Anacostia Metro Station. And so we are subgrantors of a grant that was awarded to One DC. Shout out to the Greater Washington Community Foundation, who offered this health equity grant. And so we are a recipient or subgrantor of this. And so we have support. We have a very loving team of people led by One DC. And we're under a cooperative exploration. At the end of the year, we're going to invite caregivers to come into another cohort where we're going to explore formalizing, establishing Neuro Mama as a cooperative operation for peer support. That's just our community-based. That's one that has come out of this. Highly encourage any organization to that works with our families, that has been part of school-based mental health, to think through, like, what are the ways in which you can fortify a peer workforce as well. So more to come on this later. More to come on our recommendations in terms of the law, in terms of policy. And I'm going to stop sharing. We are beyond time. And I'm going to let Fari and Renee take us out with their last thoughts on all of I just shared one more time. So, Fari, Renee, what say you? Give us your last words for the night.
This was so exhilarating. Just all the reflections of what we manifested as a team. I do want to add to the peer support piece, something that's very important in this work. And there's a level of trust with peer support workers that a lot of caregivers don't have because of mandated reporting. And so that trust level is very prominent in our peer work, and it's very important in order to have some success stories. The other part of it is the SAMHSA report indicated that there was a level of empathy from peer workers, and it goes beyond empathy and moves into compassion, because compassion means that you move to take action. And as peer support workers, we're a little more than empathetic. We're compassionate in that we are in the trenches with our fellow peers. We do what is necessary to get them to the next level, and we do what we wanted someone to do for us. So I just wanted to leave on that note, as it relates to the peer support work. The trust and the compassion are very important, and that's why peer support works.
Thank you. And you know it because you are a peer supporter
Yes.
in so many ways, more ways than one. Renee, last words for tonight.
Yes, for tonight. The peer model of support has been the thing that has been has helped us propel the public policy side of this to success. That is parents testifying with other parents, parents giving voice to lived experience, being parents of lived experience with both a consumer of the support services we want for our youth, as well as an advocate for support services. I was just really thinking about that's been the key thing that makes our efforts to codify the South Capitol Street Act and codify mental health supports in schools that's different from other parent of some of the other parent love movements that have been more frequently in the news cycle lately. You know,
Mm,
it really pressed up that model of is parent activism shouldn't just be banning the word gay or banning books or trying to arm with assault rifles teachers or something in a school setting, but we can really lead the way to like change that perception and the narrative of what by emphasizing the parents of lived experience being the ones on the forefront of demanding change in how our young people access mental health, whether they're in crisis or not in crisis. They should have the equal ability to get supports in a school setting if they so choose.
mm. Yes. No, thank you. Beautiful, beautiful, powerful. I hope you guys join us next week. I'll work on getting others to come because you guys are still the core team as we go through the recommendation. So wrapping it up. Have a great evening, safe weekend, and see you guys Monday for our internal session and then Friday for our last live stream, at least for now. All right, y'all. Good night. Peace. Love y'all.